I stand in front of you asking for reconsideration of this decision due to the severity of Mr. Shively's actions. Never have I been subject to the hostile work environment that I experienced during my time working under Mr. Shively. Since being reassigned to Human Resources in July of 2024, Mr. Shively has questioned, demeaned, degraded, and insulted the way of work in the Employee Relations Office. I was initially the indirect recipient of his unprofessional behavior, as my direct supervisor, Wallace Knight, took the brunt of the derogatory interactions. However, when I moved to Ms. McAllister's office in October of 2025, Mr. Shively started to direct his unprofessional behaviors towards me, as outlined in the report. This is not the first time Mr. Shively has exhibited this behavior in the workplace, establishing a pattern of extremely unprofessional interactions, which have been observed and reported both at Leon County Schools as well as previous employers. Because of this, I was compelled to bring attention to my concerns. There should not be a restriction on reporting or protections based on the individual or the title they hold. In addition, a hostile work environment does not need to be validated by a formal complaint to state that it exists. It just needs one voice to stand up and speak up. To insinuate that an employee, or in this case, numerous employees, are not capable of doing their job because of the relationships that are built in the workplace is insulting and demeaning. I also want to bring to attention the district's application of the formal complaint procedures in this matter, including not notifying me, the complainant, of the superintendent's final determination, but promptly providing the respondent the final determination in order to give him an opportunity to appeal unbeknownst to me.
This is a complex matter which requires that you review the full document. In these 5 minutes, I will touch on the surface of the substance of my appeal. This matter, it stems from a work-related discussion, a professional disagreement regarding the role of employee relations in the disciplinary process. The superintendent was present during the meeting at hand. Disagreement is a normal part of organizational decision-making. There was no intent to demean. The process was compromised. From the outset, I raised the concern to the superintendent about the investigator's qualifications to conduct such an investigation, along with other conflicts of interest. I requested an independent third-party investigator. While I acknowledge that the investigator is quite knowledgeable in the administration of student intervention policy, this investigator had very little experience in conducting employment-related investigations of this magnitude with adults, including key considerations at play in any employment investigation. I trusted that this matter would be seen for what it was, a work-related professional disagreement, nothing more. And if not, I would have the opportunity to dispute any errors by the investigator prior to the final decision being made by the superintendent. The investigator exceeded the scope of their role by inappropriately sustaining or substantiating violations of policy and recommended consequences. Under District Policy 1362, the investigator gathers and makes recommendations regarding potential violations. However, it's the superintendent that issues the final decision as to whether the complaint is substantiated. Here, the investigator issued definitive findings of policy violations in a document entitled Final Determination Report. That's not a recommendation, that's a decision. Plain and simple, the investigator did not understand the role and did not have the experience or authority to make that determination.
Today, I stand with my recommendation tonight. I followed progressive discipline as outlined in policy. No one had ever filed a complaint against Mr. Shively in the past, that a coaching memo was in order if you follow our progressive discipline.
What were the mistakes and did they affect your decision?
My decision, although I respect Ms. Fitzgerald and the job that I asked her to do, I put her in a position that she didn't ask for, she didn't sign up for, but she is a professional. Since the complaint was made against my compliance officer, in hindsight, I probably should have hired outside counsel to look into the matter. I just thought we could handle it internally. And obviously I was mistaken. But at the end of the day, Ms. Fitzgerald did her job as we asked.
I heard you say two things that I wanted some follow-up on. One was that Ms. Fitzgerald didn't sign up for this. Was this part of her job description to handle something like this, or was it not?
So as a member of the leadership team and being an assistant superintendent, from time to time I will ask them to conduct investigations or complaints or look into complaints. So yes, I guess is in totality, it was a responsibility or something that she could be tasked with.
That is under her duties. It wasn't like she was randomly assigned.
No, and she
this.
works, no, it wasn't random. But
Okay.
at the end of the day, I think even with outside counsel, I think I still would have gone to a coaching memo. And to his point, I was present at least for one of those conversations, and I got upset with both of them. I said, enough. I have, enough people outside of these walls that are wanting to cause, but it's just disappointing. So, but I would have reached the same conclusion.
And I think the one concerning thing I hear is that you're telling us that you would have still recommended a coaching memo, even if it would have gone to an outside counsel, without even knowing what that outside counsel would have determined or recommended. You're still saying you would have gone with this. So in my mind, you're kind of saying, well, I don't care what Ms. Fitzgerald said, what our internal was, what the external was. If we would have hired them, you're still saying I would have gone with this coaching memo, and that statement is a little concerning.
Love first and lead second.
So you either affirm his decision to issue a coaching memo, or you reject that, and in rejecting that, you make whatever decision you're going to make, and that decision becomes the final decision.
I move approval of the superintendent's recommendation.
Well, everyone has not had a chance to discuss.
I was just making.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Multiple policy violations, right? That was concerning for me. And that's what was found in the record. Two, now, I don't know if this is true or not, but it was articulated that this is a pattern. So you have multiple violations, and then you have a pattern, okay? Three, the letter of counseling, and Ms. Superintendent, maybe you can weigh in on this. A letter of counseling is not a consequence. I thought I heard that. Is that true?
So a couple of things. I'm not sure where you get pattern from.
Oh, it was articulated.
Well, I've never had a complaint filed against Mr. Shibley.
That's fine, Mr. Superintendent. What I'm saying is...
You said pattern.
No, I understand. I'm saying that in all of the conversation, these were the four things that I heard.
Right.
Right? So...
I have no record of a pattern.
Right. Okay, that's fine.
Which is then also what led me to the coaching memo.
Right. That's fine.
Coaching memo by strict definition, again, there are those steps.
No, I understand. So that was the third one. And then the fourth one was the lack of communication with the complainant and closing the loop. So, all of those things were concerning for me. The steps are recommendations and not mandates, right? Based on the severity of the violation. So I will not be supporting the motion on the floor. I would go back to the original recommendation because, again, there are multiple policies that were violated.
So to me, there were some disparities in some of those testimonies of things that happened, and not to take anything away from the allegations at all, but at the same time, there were some questions that were raised, and Mr. Superintendent referred to that about things that he wished that he would have done different. But if you looked at every document that was submitted and all the testimonials of people that were there in the room or whatever, there was, to me, not a very clear-cut. There was a clear-cut example, and we talked about feelings, but there wasn't a clear-cut example that you pointed out, a pattern. There was no evidence that supported a pattern of that behavior, and I feel like that this situation has been dragged through the mud in social media, which is not fair to the people that are involved, and it sheds a horrible light on our district, and I think it's just very unfortunate, and it's very disappointing that employee disagreements in the situation got to this level.
We have a motion to accept the superintendent's or to affirm the superintendent's recommendation. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. Mr. Jones?
I'm opposed.
So the recommendation fails, 2-3.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the recommendation of Assistant Superintendent Tanja Fitzgerald in this matter.
And the policy says that the superintendent has the final determination. Is that correct?
The policy says that the superintendent issues a decision. If the complainant or respondent are dissatisfied with the superintendent's decision, they appeal to this board. This board reviews the matter. After following review of the matter, the board either affirms or rejects the superintendent's decision, and the board's decision becomes final. That's what it says.
Any other questions, Ms. Cox?
I just think a letter of reprimand is not what is appropriate in this situation.
It was very hard for me to come to my decision because going back to what I said, I honestly believe that all of this could have possibly been avoided. Well, climate applies to the district. Climate applies to the board.
Our role is not to act as Tanja Fitzgerald did as the investigator. It is our job to determine whether policy was followed for the investigation and whether there is a justifiable reason for the superintendent to reject that recommendation. In my mind, there is no justifiable cause for him to reject the finding. Quite opposite, she did exactly what she was tasked to do and came up with a recommendation. Should it have been external? Possibly, but superintendent himself just said he would have rejected either way. So in my mind, he's already stated that he has a predetermined idea about how he wanted this to be handled. And I don't see the reason for a rejection. That's where I'm coming from.
Is that the superintendent was actually in the room of that meeting, and then when Ms. Fitzgerald did her investigations, there were people that were interviewed that were not in that meeting, and I feel like he had a handle on everything that happened, and that's why the policy that he would make the recommendation, and I feel like that is our responsibility. And I too, I hate that y'all are in this situation, that we're in this situation, and feelings are important, but also facts are very important. And I feel like he looked at that, and that was his recommendation, and that's why I'll stand by his recommendation.
Maybe the procedure wasn't exactly the way it was supposed to be in terms of what recommendations were supposed to be made by the person who investigated. That was Mr. Shavely's point. And to me, the superintendent has the overall view that nobody else really has in this district, including us.
There were multiple violations, right? And there were multiple policies that were violated, right? And we've always, so first of all, I think we're diminishing, and I know it's unintentional, but we're diminishing the skill set and that
in no way.
That assistant super, but we are.
Well, I just
right?
said another person made a different point of view about how to interpret the policy.
Right, but Mr. Superintendent sat right there and said she is well versed.
Completely.
She has done it, right? And like right at that podium and said she and so she has the authority. Like she has done a deeper dive into the facts, Ms. Cox, than even the superintendent, right? A deeper dive.
But he was there.
Right. He has. I also read all the reports, right? I read them all. Multiple violations, as we articulated, the progressive matrix is not a mandate; it's a recommendation. I'm going to affirm Ms. Smith's motion.
I in no way would ever question Tanja Fitzgerald's capability, capacity. What the point I was making is that the complainant said that, from their point of view, that those conclusions were not supposed to be drawn in the investigation. They were supposed to, all the facts were supposed to be given to the superintendent. So I was just repeating that, not any dispersion, please.
I hear you.
Any character.
That was one of, I think, 4 policy violations, and that one only would have.
Mr. Chair, I call the vote.
All right, we're going to call the.
That's fine.
We got to call the vote. All right, passes 3-2.